I say come. Come. Then we build a nation together. Come together, 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 together. I say come. Come, say we build a nation together. We build a nation together. Come, and we build a nation together. And we build a nation together. I say come, sisters, and we build a nation together. Come, and we build a nation together. And we build a nation together. I say, sisters, and we build a nation together.
Good evening again, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of DMs with PM. It is your Tuesday evening entertainment and, of course, information segment, because I see a lot of you are thoroughly entertained in the comment section. So we are so happy to have you back for another edition. And I know this is the edition you've been waiting for, as we have the Prime Minister back in the seat. And I think I speak for everyone when we say we are happy to have him back. The ministers did a good job, but I know you guys viewing and listening would love to hear from him this evening, and that's what we're about to do. But before we introduce the Prime Minister, I want to welcome all our listeners on radio, Power FM, Vibes FM, CARICOM, Star FM, Fusion FM, GBN, and We FM. And not forgetting you, the viewers on Facebook and YouTube. So do us a favor quickly and just share the live, because it will be a very, very interesting evening. So without any further ado, welcome back, Prime Minister. It's a pleasure to have you in the chair again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I missed Grenada. I hope everyone missed me as well.
I think you were thoroughly missed based on, the comments and the questions. Is the PM back? Is the PM back every week? So we are happy to have you back. So in the meantime, guys, like I said, share the live. Remember, we are live on YouTube and Facebook, and of course also on radio. And again, welcome to this week's edition of DMs with PM. So we're not going to stick, because this is the fastest hour on radio and of course online, so we have to get into it right away. So without any further ado, again, it's been how many days? 2 weeks? Okay, 2 weeks. So we are happy to have you back, like I said. And of course, you're on your recent trip to Ghana. We got a lot of insights, via social media and all of that. But speak to us about your recent trip, and maybe you can highlight some things that stood out the most for you.
Sure. First of all, it was an official state visit to Ghana. I had the opportunity to meet the relatively newly elected president. He was elected last year, but he has been the previous president of Ghana. There was an 8-year term when he was out of office, and he regained the presidency this year. He's a historic figure in Ghanaian politics, because he was the first vice president to become president. The president had died in office. He then took over. He ran, he won, subsequently lost again, and then ran again. So he's a well-known elder statesman in Africa and in Ghana. As you're aware, we have pursued a deliberate strategy of forging closer ties with African countries, and Grenada specifically, Ghana being one of them. So it was a high-level visit. Myself, the foreign minister, was also in attendance together with other resident ambassadors. The foreign minister of Ghana and the foreign minister of Grenada had an extensive meeting that covered a wide range of areas in terms of looking at bilateral cooperation. The immediate result of this is that we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Ghana that will see 30 Ghanaian nurses coming to Grenada. I can already say that the Ghanaians are already following up to make sure that this happens in quick time. As you are aware, the healthcare sector is one of those areas where we do have some human manpower challenges, and we want to ensure that we do everything we can to put Grenada in a place where we begin to address some of those issues now while working on the long-term project Polaris. In addition, we had also visited Ghana previously, and we would have then signed a visa waiver agreement with the Ghanaian government. So we also followed up to make sure this is operationalized. So what this sees is Grenadians, regardless of the class of passport you hold, diplomatic, ordinary, official, will be able to travel to Ghana without having to get a visa to enter Ghana. Similarly, we have waived the visa requirement for Ghanaians so that they can visit Grenada without having to obtain a visa. And certainly when we are trying to facilitate travel and we are trying to facilitate tourism, we're heavily dependent on tourism. We see that Africa has a rising middle class who, just like any other middle class anywhere in the world, wants to travel, wants to take vacations, and we want to position Grenada, and by extension the Caribbean, as a place where we can invite our brothers and sisters from Africa to come and vacation. So it involves also a closer cooperation in the culture and the creative sector. In November, we will see the Office of the Creative Affairs is collaborating with a Ghanaian firm that will come to Grenada to teach creatives skill sets, particularly when it comes to things like marketing, AI, digital marketing, etc. It's something that we are excited about, and we believe it will certainly attract a lot of our creatives. The firm is a very successful firm that has done significant work, not just in Africa, but internationally as well. We actually, significant conversations were held as well in terms of how we begin to get to the point where we have direct flights from Ghana to Grenada and the Caribbean. This is something we're working on. There's an event that is going to be held in Barbados in the not too distant future, where we expect a direct flight will come from Ghana to Barbados. When we held the Afrexim Bank event here, there was also a direct flight from Nigeria by Ethiopian Airlines to Grenada. Ethiopian Airlines is the most significant airline and successful international airline in Africa. When I visited Ethiopia, we met with the chief executive officer. We've held discussions as to how we can facilitate, even if it's once a quarter, once a month, a direct flight from Western Africa to Grenada. It's something we are going to task the Ministry of Tourism to follow up on, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we really do believe there's a significant opportunity for doing so. So it's a wide range of conversations. Of course, we discussed the shifting geopolitical issues that everyone has to grapple with. We discussed the need to ensure that we get support from our brothers and sisters in Africa for maintaining the Caribbean as a zone of peace. And coincidentally, the party that is in power in Ghana is called the National Democratic Congress. And the party that is in office in Grenada is also called the National Democratic Congress. And coincidentally, we were formed before their party was formed. So as they jokingly said in Ghana, they may owe us some royalties for the name.
And I know you're really, really passionate about forging ties with, Africa, and passionate enough to trace your ancestry. Tell us a little bit about that for those who may not have picked up on that bit of information.
Yes, well, as you are aware, the majority of our population are descendants of Africans. And so when we held the Afrexim Bank Trade and Investment Forum in July, I had traced my maternal ancestry using ancestry.com, and it revealed that my maternal ancestry comes from the Akan people in Ghana. So it's probably likely that a significant percentage of us Grenadians can also trace our ancestry to Ghana as well.
I think something we need to check. We definitely need to check up on. Well, anything else on that line, or are we good?
No, I mean, the trip was not only to Ghana, it was also to Nigeria. We visited several states within Nigeria. In fact, the bulk of the time was spent in Nigeria. The states we visited, Abuja, Lagos, Taraba State, and the Delta State. We are pursuing, even at the state level, a significant bilateral cooperation with the states, because there is enormous opportunity, particularly in agriculture in Africa. And one of the challenges we face here in Grenada is scale. So oftentimes to produce food cheaply, you need to have scale, and you need to have the right technology as well. So we're also looking at how we can cooperate to begin to see what opportunities there are for us to actually have food produced in Africa that we can then import to Grenada. To be successful at that, it will also require us to look at the logistics, because the food obviously has to be shipped. And so also we met with significant members of the private sector to see whether there are opportunities for us to introduce them to private sector personnel in the Caribbean and in Grenada who are interested in the shipping and logistics business, so that we can see how we can begin to address the challenges of food security. Africa still has significant challenges in food security, even though it's a vast continent with vast resources. So in Nigeria, for example, they're beginning to build one of the largest food hubs where they can actually store food for a much longer period. Those issues align with us, because one of the things we've done here is to approve at the cabinet level a national food security policy in very much the same way we have to address hurricane disaster preparedness and so on. Because the truth is, as an island, if you become heavily dependent on importing food and you don't know the quantity of food that's on island at any given time, as I think we experienced during COVID, if the containers don't come, you will quickly find that we will find ourselves in a position where we may not have enough food to feed the population after a month, after 2 months. We have to ensure that we are not in this sort of a vulnerable position. So one, we have to be able to store food on island for much longer periods. Two, we have to be able to produce a lot more of the food on island. And three, we need to diversify the sources from which we get our food. Because if we rely on only one source, and that source is not available, it basically means we run the risk of, I don't want to call it starvation, but we run the risk of significant challenges to our food supply. And we saw that during COVID.
During COVID, yes.
So we have to make sure that we take a more systematic approach to our food security. And I want to commend the Minister for Agriculture, Mr. Lennox Andrews, and his team for working on this document. We're hoping then to be able to operationalize it. So part of dealing with how we can get partners who can grow food cheaper in Africa and how we can ship it from Africa to the Caribbean is part of that strategy, because we have to be able to diversify if you have trade embargoes or wars or disruptions to the shipping lines, to make sure that there are multiple sources from which we can source our food.
Fantastic. Well, I know there's a lot I'm sure there's a lot that happened, and within the interest of time, we'll have to cut that trip short and move on to, home. I saw you walking the runway yesterday.
Yes.
How was that initiative? What are your thoughts on it?
It's a good initiative. I think it's an opportunity for people to see the runway in a way you never see it, because you will only see it if you're on a plane or if you're in the waving gallery looking on. And it's testimony to the amazing engineering feat that was accomplished 40 plus years ago to be able to build the runway. But it also gives you an opportunity to see what room is there for expansion, for improvement and enhancement of the airport in general. So I think it is something that we will have to task the airport team with to look at. But I think from what I saw, many people were happy. I saw people lying on the runway. I saw people jumping. I saw people. So it was certainly a feeling of elation. And I think also a feeling of pride for people knowing the struggle that we went through to get this airport and what it has meant for the economy of Grenada, the development of the southern part of the island. So it was both a symbolic but also a substantively significant event. It's the second time it's been done. I would probably say they need to encourage more Grenadians to come. The only challenge might be, I think they're charging a little fee. I'm not so sure if we should charge though, but I guess that's a matter for discussion. I think it's generally though, people should get an opportunity once a year to see the runway, to see what it's like, and hopefully it gets bigger.
You completed the entire runway? Or you
it's easy. It's easy. 3-point-something miles. Small thing.
Listen.
And it's all flat. It's not like going to Market Hill or St. John's Street or so. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, when you are heading north, as in if you take it from the approach of the plains, you do have a slight incline, so you can certainly tell it's up a little. I guess it's built that way so that it slows down the planes when it's landing. When you're heading back out south, it's a lot easier because it's a little, and the wind is with you to your back, so it pushes you down. But when you're going forward, the wind is coming against you. So I felt like a plane, when I was walking up. Landing and the wind is coming
from the
against
front.
you. Yes.
Well, just before we go to break, though, it's been 3 years since October 19th holiday. Folks are asking the question: when will heroes be named?
So we have to. It's a good question, and thank you for that. We can't rush it because we have to put a legislative framework in place. It's not just naming the heroes. You have to pass legislation that clearly articulates what's the criteria, who would be the selection panel, and most importantly, what happens when the person is named as a hero. You may be naming persons who are deceased. Are we going to name persons who are alive? And those are some of the policy debates we have to have and settle on. And the reason for that is sometimes you may want to name someone who's alive, but they may yet achieve even greater things. And so you may have to decide whether you want to wait until they're deceased. And then someone will debate and say, why wait till this person is deceased to name them as a hero? So those are some of the stakeholder consultations that we have to engage in. And then what if you're naming someone who's alive a hero, what benefits they get? So for example, in Barbados, Sir Garfield Sobers, who's alive, is a national hero. But there are also heroes who died before they were even named heroes. So those are some of the things we have to speak through. But I think also, as we endeavor to do the National Heroes Park, and it may, timing-wise, you may want to coincide all of this to come together. I'm not saying it must be that way, but it's certainly something that we are factoring as to whether or not we can work on the park and the legislation and the criteria all simultaneously together, so that when we get to the point when the heroes are named, you have their statutes or their bus or whatever we'll be putting up in honor of them, and the park is commissioned, and then you do one big grand finale. I'm sure there will be a lot of debate about who should and who shouldn't be a hero as well, and you have to give the public the chance to weigh in on this as well.
Fantastic.
But there is a committee. The same committee that is working on the Heritage Park is also the same committee that is tasked with leading the work that is required to get us to that point.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure folks are relieved with that response, because that has been one of the burning questions over the weekend, seeing that we celebrated National Heroes Day on Sunday, and of course yesterday being observed. Folks, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, it's for your DMs.
Bay Leaf, another of Project 500 signature design. This 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathrooms, a beauty, spans a gross area of 1,073 square feet. Built with fully insulated reinforced walls and insulated roof, Bay Leaf is crafted for comfort, efficiency, and sustainable living. The design achieves 100% efficiency in its superstructure. Inside, you'll find low-flow plumbing fixtures, large windows providing maximum ventilation, and a 25% greater efficiency than current building code requirements. Spacious bedroom, an open floor plan living, kitchen, and dining area. It is true to its name. Bay Leaf brings comfort and peace the moment you walk in. At Project 500, we're more than just building homes. We're about building sustainable communities and delivering quality homes for all families.
And welcome back once again to all our viewers and listeners of DMs with PM. Now it's time to take in some of your DMs. Very first question, unknown. It says Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and SVG have now moved to free movement. Does Grenada have any plans to join this grouping? And what are the hindrances to doing so now? Do you believe that CARICOM is ready to transform into the highest level of regional integration?
So we do intend to join the grouping. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General's office is working on whatever final hurdles we need to overcome to make sure we join the free movement. Certainly we are highly supportive of the need for CARICOM nationals to be able to move freely within the member states. We see the movement of people as critical towards the integration movement. I don't know what he means by the highest level of integration, if it's political integration. If it's political integration, I think the answer is obviously no. It has never really been something since the collapse of the Federation that CARICOM governments have pursued. But I certainly think if we have economic integration and the free movement of people, then that paves the way for a consideration as to whether there is greater political union. I would say within the OECS, we probably have a far greater chance of more integration, simply because we already have significant institutions that are integrated. Our court system, our central bank or monetary system is already integrated. So we have the OECS Commission. There are things we do. For example, we are hosting the Ministers of Health Council meeting right now in Grenada. We have a joint pool procurement process for procuring medical supplies and pharmaceutical supplies. So as we continue building on those blocks, for example, we've recently signed an agreement within the OECS to have a joint regulator for the citizenship by investment programs. We are going to Parliament in Grenada on Friday to pass the legislation in the lower house. So again, that will be stationed in Grenada. So within the OECS, I think there will continue to be a movement to closer integration on a number of issues. In CARICOM, it probably would be slower because you have more diversity within the groups.
And next question from Merle Collins reads, is there a zoning policy so that garages don't operate in residential areas? If there is such a policy, is it enforced? Is there a body to whom people might report infringements if the policy exists? Is this a concern for public health?
Thank you, Ms. Collins, for the question. I don't think the word is really policy. We have the Planning and Development Authority. That's the statutory body that is tasked with enforcing planning and development. And that essentially means any development on land. As it stands right now, there is no clear-cut zoning legislation that enforces any zoning policy. So yes, you do run the risk that you could have a nice house, and right next to it, someone could in fact own land and erect a garage. And if planning permission was given for the garage, then the person would be complying with the planning law. If planning permission was not granted, then they would be in breach of the planning law, and the planning authority would be able to take enforcement action against them. The challenge we face, obviously, is that the planning authority, its resources are quite finite and limited, and in many instances, you do have these roadside garages popping up quite frequently. The challenge we face is that we don't have enough land space to have what I would call industrial sites where we can move the garages and so on. It is something we have to be able to address because, as I'm sure you would appreciate, people with vehicles do need to have their vehicles serviced. The persons who are mechanics do provide a service to the public. What we have to do is try and find appropriate locations where they can provide that service and the public can go to. But a lot of the mechanics are individuals who essentially went to TAMCC or NULO, learn their trade, and obviously are trying to offer a service and offer business. And oftentimes they do it in their homes or wherever they can find a piece of land to do so. So it is a challenge. It is something that we have to be able to talk about to find solutions. And I don't want pitch people against each other. So as a government, our job would really be how we can find spaces that would allow for garages and other persons who are trying to do small businesses that are service oriented to find spaces to operate in, perhaps for lower minimum rent, so that the public can be serviced.
And Known is asking, given that the government has mandated the implementation of bi-monthly salaries, why has this change not yet been put in effect at all statutory bodies, and what steps are being taken to ensure compliance?
Well, thank you for that. I would need to check in relation to which statutory bodies are not paying bi-monthly, and I'm sure once we do that, the Ministry of Finance would be able to issue the policy guidelines to make sure that it happens. I will confess that I'm not aware that there are statutory bodies that have not fulfilled that mandate. Certainly central government has, and I will ask the Minister of Finance to look into it.
Okay. Joseph is asking, what is the current status of the shanty town created along the Port Highway in Tantine?
Well, I'm not sure if I can answer what the status is if you're referring to the vendors who are along the Port Highway. Most of the vendors who are there probably don't have physical or planning authority to be there. And I think you would recall perhaps last year, moves were afoot to be able to relocate the vendors. It is something we still need to address. It goes back to the same point about some of the roadside garages. Obviously, the port is a busy place. You have a lot of people who enter and exit the port, who clearing, doing business, and the vendors provide food and drinks, etc. As part of, obviously, the bustle and the hustle of commercial activity. Ideally, we would prefer not to have roadside vending, but we recognize that until we find an appropriate solution that can accommodate both the needs of the public in terms of finding a place to eat and the need of the vendors to be able to find a place to vend, we don't necessarily want to be high-handed and go simply knocking all of them down. It's not a license or a recipe for people to continue erecting new ones, but it is something that I think we are committed to trying to address with the Port Authority and with the Planning and Development Authority.
Okay. Tira Maria asks, can attention be given to restoring and maintaining Grenada's tennis courts? It's disheartening to see the sports facilities in decline.
The answer is yes. I think through the Ministry of Youth and Sports and through MIT, we began with basketball courts. So there's no reason why we can't extend to tennis courts. In fact, I'm aware that someone has been looking to approach the government to see whether they too can contribute. That's a private couple, to see how they can help improve and renovate some of the tennis courts as well. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Tennis sometimes is perhaps a forgotten or under-highlighted sport, and it is something that I think we can certainly look at in the coming budget cycle.
Okay. Well, just before we go to the streets, there's another quick question someone is asking. Can the PM let us know if the word Imani is still present at the moment? And can he let us know when regularization would be available to some hardworking Imani, especially those in the public sector?
Right. Well, I think the question is answering itself, whether the word is wrong. We hear less of it, and I think we're very grateful and thankful for that. The regularization of persons who were trainees and styled as Imanis is something that is ongoing. We met a very complicated system and a pretty large workforce with all type of different names or classifications. So what we sought to do first was to deal with established public officers, then officers on contracts for and off service, and then to deal with persons who were styled as trainees. So you are aware that we increased the minimum wage to make sure that even the trainees who were styled as trainees or Imanis receive the $1,200 per month. We have introduced the pension scheme to make sure that non-established or contract off and contract for service workers can now have a pension. We have paid the retroactive pension and reinstated the pensions for established workers. And so the last stage really is to deal with how we transition persons who are trainees or Imanis, either because Imanis both operate in the private sector and in the public sector. So in the private sector, the approach has been that you have to hire them. If you no longer wish to hire them, then obviously fine, we'll have to work out how we transition them out, but we can't supply cheap labor for the private sector. Within the government sector, the approach is we will interview and verify that the persons are qualified, that they can do the jobs, and the aim is ultimately to get them into what I would call non-established mainstream government employees who will have the similar benefits as persons who were previously on contract offer for service. So this is ongoing. It may invariably get to a point where there is some attrition, because unfortunately, you can't train for 4 and 5 years. There's no such job in the world that requires you to train for 4 and 5 years. So there has to be a point where you're a genuine employee, where you're productive, where you come to work on time, you do what is required, and you're treated as an employee. If that results in a net surplus where you have to find employment or retrain, we'll endeavor to do so.
Okay. Fantastic. Folks, we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll head to the streets.
Cinnamon, one of the signature designs of Project 500. This 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home spans 1,122 square feet, crafted for sustainable and modern living. The design features efficiency in wall, windows, and roof, engineered to reduce your overall electrical consumption by minimizing heat buildup. A cooler building on those hot days. Inside, you'll find low-flow plumbing fixtures, which reduces water usage. Efficiency without sacrifices. With 3 spacious bedrooms, this design offers a retreat for all members of the family. With an open floor plan comprising of dining, living, kitchen, dedicated laundry, utility closet, water storage, solar panel, and parking for 2. And an area for outdoor home gardening. The Cinnamon balances functionality and style. At Project 500 is more than just building homes. It's about developing sustainable communities and delivering quality homes for all families.
And welcome back once again to all our viewers and listeners of DMs with PM. It's time to head to the streets. Yeah, DMs from the street with Norris.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Norris Francois. What's your name?
My name is Mr. Million Chum. Nice meeting you.
All right.
Yes.
share your concerns to the Prime Minister?
Right. Well, I am, as I say already, my name is Mr. Midian Charles. I've been working up the land behind the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm in Maribor, and I work in this land about 30 years.